laid back here, man. So we're just quick introduction. We got Giulio Gallarotti, right, or Gallarotti?
Yeah, Gallarotti.
Okay, well, we're just pronouncing all the consonants,
Yeah,
Giulio.
nailed
So
it, nailed it.
works for me, man. Hey, welcome to the podcast, dude.
Thank you guys. Good to be here. Yeah, I'm Giulio Gallarotti. I guess I'm a comedian. I do sort of a variety of things underneath that title. You know, what I mean, like most comedians, I do stand up. I have a podcast, and I like making sort of videos predominantly based around travel, mostly, as you guys know. So yeah, that's why I was in Afghanistan. And I don't know if I would describe myself the same way as that other guy, the Australian guy, as far as like conflict tourism. Although what I do a lot of the time, it can be kind of nice for it to be a place that kind of has had a little bit of some tough times or a tough reputation, because I kind of like to go in there and kind of just see what everyday life is like, and see what the deal, people live in all these places. So it's like, I'm curious to just see what that's like, because it's usually not as bad as they portray. So that's sort of how I got going doing all this in Afghanistan is the most recent one. So I'm editing it now, and hopefully it'll all be done kind of in the next couple months. It's a scoop.
So what were you? That's awesome, man. What were the months you were over there, or the time frame you were over there?
I was there for like 10 days in the beginning of September of
So
2022.
okay, so this year, so Taliban have been in control of the country for a year now. So
It was right around the anniversary.
yeah, so what was that like, man? Like, can you describe like landing, or how you got into the country? Did you have
Yeah,
to get a
sure.
visa or whatever?
Yeah. So had to get a visa in Dubai. There's a couple of places you can do it apparently. But I did it in Dubai. And the guys who work at the consulate are like people who were part of the old government. And I don't think they've gone back. It's sort of weird. Like the way that the way that the Taliban has sort of taken over has been a little unconventional, as you guys know, and just seeing them try to get it together and figure it out is sort of fascinating, I guess, as well as sad. But there's a lot to that, but that's sort of not what I'm that interested in, I guess, ultimately. But so basically, got the visa in Dubai, flew on Cam Air into Kabul. That's like the national airline, I guess. Or I don't know if it's the national airline, but it's been there since like 2003, I think. And yeah, flew in. That feeling when you land somewhere and you're just kind of like, whoa, I can't believe I'm here. Obviously have that feeling like to the nines. And then sort of have to fill out my paperwork once you land, which again, like they don't really like, usually I'm used to places that have like kind of situations like that being really on top of this kind of stuff. And Afghanistan like wasn't like that, like it says like, where are you going? And you have to like, leave your address. I didn't know. The guy goes, just write hotel. You know what I mean? You think that they would want you to like be really on top of that protocol wise. Anyway, so then we had a guide. So I met him when we got out of the airport, took us to the hotel. We threw on some like local clothes, and then, only wore local clothes for the rest of the time. So yeah, that was like how we got there and stuff. And yeah, it was quite a trip, man.
Did you fly in from Terminal 2 in Dubai?
I don't remember. Is that the terminal usually? I could probably look.
So
It's just a
sketchiest
joke.
term.
It's a joke terminal, because like the same
yeah,
guys you were trying to capture the week before are all there, like in their luggage when you go there too.
yeah.
So
So Dubai, there's two sides to the Dubai airport, right? There's Terminal 1, which is really fucking nice, right? It's got all the nice restaurants, you can get alcohol, all that shit, right? I went there, I spent $13 to shower because I hadn't showered in like 4 days trying to leave Afghanistan. But then the flight back to Afghanistan, so I fly, I take my flights from like Minnesota to Amsterdam back to Dubai, all through Terminal 1. Then Terminal 2 looks like a literal refugee camp.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
yeah, and like all the flights to Madrid and Barcelona and London and like, all the cool places are Terminal 1, and then you get to Terminal 2. It's like Islamabad, Karachi, New Delhi, some place in Malaysia.
Yeah,
Stark difference.
that's funny. Man, I don't remember. I do remember that the flight time was really shitty. Like the departing, there was two flights every day at like 3:30 and 4:30 a.m. or something. Uh, but yeah, I don't remember specifically. Where we came in and out of, I don't think was that bad actually. So maybe they've given Afghanistan a little boost, a little bump.
Was it a direct flight from Dubai to Kabul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Direct flight.
So what made you? Because we all listened to your podcast you did with Francis. What made you decide to like ultimately go to Afghanistan?
Well, like it was just so interesting to me, the idea that like, you know, the Taliban's the government now, and this idea that around these sort of like blogs online, it was sort of floating around that despite the fact that the Taliban's the government, that oddly makes it more suitable for sort of putzing around as a tourist than it had been previously when the Taliban were, you know, a proper insurgency. They're like, you know, the country's fairly secure at this point. And even though, you know, encountering the Taliban is not always super pleasant, it's like you're not really at any heightened risk as a tourist. Obviously, being in Afghanistan comes with its own set of risks as far as like terrorism and all that stuff goes. But, you know, as you guys know, that kind of stuff is still ultimately pretty low probability. Yes, as a foreigner, you make yourself a little bit of a target, but as you also know, everybody looks like they're from Afghanistan. So as long as you're dressed up like a person from Afghanistan, nobody's going to fucking know who you are unless they hear you speaking your non-local language, you know? But still, like, I didn't feel like the Taliban felt they were everywhere. You know what I mean? That was definitely the biggest headache as far as our trip was concerned. Not besides the obvious stuff, like the hotel accommodations not being very nice, the roads not being very nice. You know, it's really old fashioned life they're living there. So from a person who lives in New York, you know what I mean? That's a little bit of an adjustment, but as far as like danger goes, it didn't feel like it was going to be super duper dangerous. And so I just figured, wow, this will be an easy way to make a video that people will watch despite whether or not I actually do anything that interesting when I'm there. You know what I mean? Like the title itself will make people watch it as opposed to like me going somewhere else that a bunch of people have been and I have to do something amazing in order for people to care. You know what I mean? Yeah. Unfortunately, that's kind of why I decided at the end of the day to do it.
Did they give you a hard time? Did you ever have like any bad run-ins with the Taliban? Because we talked to like, you know, an Australian guy, or you go on like, you know, the famous, you know, Lord Miles, you know, I'm probably sure you've probably seen his Twitter account. Maybe the guy that goes to Afghanistan. He's a British citizen. And they have a fairly decent time with the Taliban. They'll like invite him to dinner and stuff. As an American, did you have any bad run-ins with them?
It was the same thing. I mean, it's pretty much what everybody's been saying about it. I know everybody is like a small community that I sort of take not for granted, but I forget that like not everybody is reading these sort of like extreme travel blogs. I don't consider myself an extreme traveler, by the way. I don't like going without a guide. I don't like being gone for 4 weeks. You know what I mean? I like to go and come back. Like I'm not one of these guys who try to do it for $1 a day. Like those guys are all cheap and dirty. And like, I'm not like that. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to like live that life. But yeah, my Taliban run-ins were pretty straightforward. Like the same shit every time, kind of greeted with skepticism in this way that was like annoying. It's like, why haven't you guys gotten the like official memo on this? You know what I mean? They'd be like, who are you? What are you doing here? You tell them, they're like, oh, cool. And then they're like, well, you're welcome here. You have nothing to worry about. We, the Taliban, have secured the country. And then they try to like loop you in to hang out. They're like, come become a Muslim. Come have tea. Come meet my uncle. And you're like, no, I can't. I got to go. And they're like, oh, okay, no problem. And they let you go usually, which is like hilarious to me. Or they try to get you to give their guys rides. So they'll be like, take this guy with you. And our guy would be like, no, sorry, we can't. Like, and they'd be like, why? And we'd be like, because we don't know you. And they'd go, okay. I'd be like, that worked. Like, what?
They're just trying to use you as an Uber. What?
Yeah,
like they just had access to a car. Just trying to.
So
That's weird, man.
So weird.
Yeah.
Pashtun Wally, man. Good.
Yeah. The whole idea of needing a ride. Sorry, Stu. I know you told me to stop clicking my pen. The whole idea of, hey, can you give me a ride is not Taliban centric. That is like every province in Afghanistan, no matter what fucking ethnicity or religion, they're all like, hey, where are you going? Can I hop on? It's like, yeah, sure. Fine. Come on. It's this weird thing. Maybe it stems from a largely rural country where there's not a lot of cars, and so guys like, fuck it, I don't feel like walking today. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, hilarious. That's really funny. My only one like jam up was when they make us get out of the car driving around at night. And I'm sure you guys probably heard this story because I know that this was a clip and then we talked about it in our episode too. But for anybody listening, they made us get out of the car at night. That's like more likely to happen. They're just kind of like spending more time finding out where you're going, which is just, it's silly to me in a way. It's like, if people know that they're not going to check you as much during the day, why, like any bad guy would go during the day, because at night they're going to get, you know what I mean? Whatever. So getting out of the car, common, having to get your picture taken for fun, like for their own personal sort of memories, common. Usually they're nice, but then this one time they made us get out. Now we have to have dinner with them on the side of the road. They make us go to the commander's headquarters or whatever. And now we're just chilling there for like a really long time, which was annoying. And then they're like, you're coming over for lunch tomorrow on the way back. We're like, yeah, sure. Like hoping we don't actually have to. Then they start shaking us down a little bit for money. They like find all my money, but then ask for like a very modest amount, which I just thought was so weird. It's like, dude, you could just take all the money. You guys have so many guns. What are you like? Are you serious? But I know that they knew they would get in trouble maybe if they did that or something. I don't really know. Gave the guy like $100. They let us go. And fortunately on the way back, we left early, so we didn't see them again. That was like the most comprehensive. And obviously during that, like I was a little freaked out. Like it's easy to kind of tell the story now and be like, oh, you know, it was fine. But you hear stories about people being in that situation who then they hang on to them for a couple of days. And that to me is just a bummer, dude. I'm not trying to be in that house for 2 days, you know? So that didn't happen to us. But after that had happened, I was like, okay, I'm good on Taliban interaction. I'd like to avoid this for the rest of the trip. We still had to talk to a few guys here and there, but nothing else too bad, fortunately.
I love that they're like, you know, gotta have dinner with us, and you're like, ah, shit, dude, fucking Taliban, man. You know, like I love that it's like that's the thing, because yeah, obviously they're gonna keep you there for a little while. Yeah. But so where were you in Afghanistan? Like, what part of the country? And
so yeah, I'm curious to hear the same from you guys in a little bit. But basically, started in Kabul. We went to like Maidan Wardak, which I know was like a big spot for war.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like one of the spots, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's just like places where landmines exploded, like literally constantly the entire drive. And then Bamyan, and then we went to we made our way up to Mazar-e Sharif through the mountains, through that like rush. Do you guys know about that tunnel that goes through the mountains?
Yeah.
That thing.
The Salang Pass?
Yes. That's just scary, bro. That was probably the second most scared I was on that trip, was being stuck in a traffic jam with all those disgusting coal trucks in the middle of that tunnel. That was not fun. So yeah, made our way up to Mazar-e Sharif. The names of the provinces are escaping me. I'm sure you guys know, but like, you know, sort of parallel to the Panjshir Valley, driving up that way and then back down to sort of Bamyan Kabul area. That was pretty much it. That was the whole, and we drove around, which I know is like a thing that nobody was doing up until literal, like right now. I mean, you guys can speak more to that probably, but yeah, they were like, if you were to drive this back in the day, like that would be a very, 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 very bad idea. So,
oh yeah, you'd be hitting IEDs. I mean, so yeah, Wardak. So we were all in the army. So I was in from 2012 to 2016, and then went on to contract. But our guys over in Wardak in 2012, like it was bad. It was really a very kinetic area that you like I'm sure you saw. You were talking about like you could see where the mines and bombs had exploded. Yeah. We would typically, moving from base to base back then, use helicopters. So you just fly out to whatever base you're going to, and you look out the side and you just see like pock marks all over the place. Like it's a beautiful country, but you can see the scars from the last 3 wars that have been over there. Just horrible.
Totally, dude. And bullet holes everywhere. Just like the other thing that I thought was crazy driving around was like people just live in fucking like 16th century stone buildings on some shit where like if that were anywhere else, they'd be like, this is where so-and-so lived. And instead they're like, no, this is where like my uncle literally lives right now. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. Although all the stories, like driving around, the stories that they would tell us were just like insane stories. They're either about like, oh, this is where Genghis Khan murdered every single person in this village. Like, heard that story 80 times. Then they're like, oh yeah, like a Taliban guy was just sitting on top of there one time and just shooting all the cars that drove by, like sort of almost for fun. We think it's kind of weird, but like, yeah, dude, like everybody who drove by that day, like got shot by the Taliban. We're like, what? And then he's like, yeah, this is where my uncle was giving a guy a ride and the Taliban stopped him. And I was like, oh, like they shot him. He's like, no. They like cut his head off in front of my uncle's face. I was like, Jesus, dude. Like, so just stories like that over and over again. And I was like, you guys have been through some shit, dude.
And you went to Bamyan too. Bamyan was like a black hole for intelligence for us because it's all controlled by like a minority Hazara population.
Right.
So when you're in Bamyan, I've seen pictures. It's absolutely beautiful. What was that like visiting that? Like it's probably entirely different than like Wardak or even Mazar-e Sharif. Probably, right?
Yeah. It's not as like there aren't as many. You don't see as many like Pashtun people. Like you said, it's like a lot of Hazara people who are like a little more laid back. And they're not as like, obviously everybody's covered up. Everybody's like pretty devout, but they're not like wearing the full thing. You know what I mean? That was also interesting to see how like the official rules versus what is actually enforced are just not the same thing. But yeah, dude, that area was really cool. There's a lot of really beautiful nature. Obviously those like giant Buddhas that are no longer there are there. I've heard apparently that there's like an even bigger one underground that they found. That's like the biggest one on the planet. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. But dude, yeah, it was really nice. It was interesting though, because it was like a super peaceful area in theory, laid back, chill. Everybody's like smoking hash. And like, there was a ton of Taliban in the area though, because like you said, it's like the minority. They just want to make sure that nobody's like rallying up to fight them or something. That was how it was explained to me. But it was great.
That's absolutely happening.
Yeah. Wait, which part?
The rallying to fight the Taliban.
Oh, right.
That's absolutely happening. So like Afghanistan's like I responded to somebody on Twitter today because there's a press clipping from the Taliban going around that they're confiscating weapons from everybody, and like, well, of course. And somebody said, well, of course they are. They're trying to like deter another civil war. Like they've been in the civil war for 100 fucking years. It's just other countries where everybody speaks English or Russian tend to get involved every now and then. There's a difference, right? And like where you were at in Bamyan, where it's largely Hazara, yeah, you got a Taliban presence there because, or you have a larger presence there than you would in a place like maybe Northern Helmand, because you have such a concentrated population of people who are not adherents of Pashtunwali. They are Shia Muslims instead of Sunni Muslims. They're anti-Taliban. The Taliban are absolutely concerned that something's going to pop off. We know that there's Hazara warlords in Bamyan and Ghor and Daikundi, which all kind of touch each other in central Afghanistan. And I mean, the Taliban kind of have to make some concessions, right? Where you're talking about you don't see as strict adherence to Taliban policy in a place like Bamyan. It's because they're outnumbered. Right, there's 10 Shia Hazara for every Taliban up there. You kind of have to pick your battles. You have to let them do a few things here and there, because if you try to get in the way, well, you're going to get fucking killed because you're largely outnumbered.
Right. Interesting. That's crazy. Where were you guys all like stationed and stuff?
Oh man. So I was we were all intel kids. Kyle did airplane intel stuff, which is more special, but also more confusing for the person doing it, from my understanding. I was supporting third group. We covered my first deployment. I was covering the P2K area, so Paktika and Coast down in southeast Afghanistan, bordering Pakistan. Then I was mainly covering Kapisa province for my other two deployments, and then contracting Kandahar, and then I ended up going all over the place. So.
Cool.
Did you go to Kandahar at all, or did you skip the Taliban homeland there, Giulio?
What's that?
Did you go to Kandahar at all?
No, I wanted to.
Good call.
I wanted to go there. I just heard some really weird stuff about like just like Pashtun culture and like Kandahar University, and like I don't know, dude. It was just like really fascinating, and I was like, oh man, that would be cool. But no, we didn't I just didn't have enough time. But yeah, no Kandahar, no. I'm trying to think. Herat, Helmand, obviously, like no big, well-known places. That border area with Pakistan is a little dicey, right? I think still. Like
it's a lot dicey.
Does it border Baluchistan? Like I heard that like Baluchistan is like not a safe place for travelers to go in Pakistan.
Basically anywhere in the FATA region, which is the border area in western Pakistan, you want to stay out of for sure. Those were all like Taliban strongholds that the Pakistan government don't run. It's called the FATA region, the federally administered tribal areas, and it's basically like free for all, black markets. Al Qaeda has a presence out there, so yeah, definitely the place to avoid if you're going to Pakistan. And then the Afghan border region over there has a group called the Haqqani Network, which were some of the better trained fighters that worked really closely with Al Qaeda throughout the war. So
yeah, those dudes are super gnarly. They've been around for a while, right? The Haqqani Network.
Yeah, they joined up with the Taliban pretty quickly after their rise in like the early 90s, and it's all kind of top down, like a sort of family based group that's managed that area for a long time. So
yeah, and then like for Baluchistan itself, that farthest west province in Pakistan, it's also the easternmost province in Iran, is also called Baluchistan. Then southern Kandahar, southern Helmand, where you have a lot of nomadic tribes, you'll have some Baluch people as well. And yeah, I mean, that's just like fucking no-go area in general. So Quetta, which is where the Taliban based their operations during the 20-year war on terror in Afghanistan, is in Baluchistan. And that's where like Habatullah Akhundzada, who's the current, emir of the Taliban, he was in Quetta with 33 other senior ranking members. That's like where they had their fucking his cabinet, his administration operated out of there. So there are smuggling routes into Afghanistan from Baluchistan, and then you just have the Baluch people. And as I've referenced on this podcast before, if you think America's racist, go to Central Asia, and where you have everybody hates everybody for this. Even in Afghanistan, you have people who are Pashtun who fucking hate each other because they're from the wrong side of the river, right? So then you throw in the Baluch people who aren't Pashtun, they aren't Hazara, they aren't Turkmen, they're not Iranian, they're not Persian. Everybody fucking hates them, right? So it's just a breeding ground for more violence. So yeah, it's definitely a no-go area.
I hate to say it. Dude, the one time, this is funny. We were like, so we hung out with a bunch of like, our guide is Tajik, and he was explaining to me how, like to your point, there's just like a bunch of different groups of people. And he was like, yeah, that's another thing that I thought was interesting. Like the Taliban was pretty diverse also. He's like, yeah, it's just, you just like have to be Sunni Muslim and you can be in it. So that's why there's just like Uzbeks, Tajiks, like all these different kinds of group. I just envisioned, the Pashtun guy, like the like classic poster child of the Taliban. But one time we were hanging out having lunch at this one place, and this like Pashtun guy came over to buy potatoes from the guy, and he was like screaming, and I was like, what's that guy all pissed off about? He's like, oh, he's not pissed, he's just Pashtun. He's like this is just how they talk, they're really fucking loud. I'm like, dude, that's so funny. That's such a funny nuance.
That is not inaccurate.
Could you tell as you made your way, I guess, north, you'd be heading north in Afghanistan. Could you tell if there was like any, I would say Afghanistan's always had a problem with central government, but as you went north, could you see that the control of the Taliban government kind of didn't have, it kind of failed, I guess to say, in that, obviously around Wardak, it's probably a lot stronger than it was like in Mazar-e Sharif, right? Like,
So not really, to be honest. Like
really?
There was like a very, very clear Taliban presence every single place that I was. On the roads, in the cities, they were everywhere, walking around, doing their thing. And it didn't feel like there were certain places like in parts of Wardak. And then I'm looking here because I forget some of these provinces. There were parts where they'd be like, all right, they make the camera guy get in the back seat, because they're like, all right, like we're more likely to get stopped here. Let's just like switch it up. Or even I know the Panjshir Valley, there's that like insurgency happening. So like when we drove kind of near there, we switched it out. But for the most part, it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like as you got further away from Kabul, there was less government control. But like the guys in Kabul, like you could tell that's where the big dogs were. There's a lot of like Land Cruisers and Forerunners and like dudes who looked clean. You know what I mean? Like I don't even like we go to lunch, there'd be like a bunch of dudes praying, and like that's the only time where no one's gonna ask us questions. Whereas in any other place, we'd be in fucking KFC knockoff and Taliban commanders sitting next to us, here's us talking. All of a sudden, we're talking to this guy for 40 fucking minutes. You know what I mean? So that was sort of like my experience, you know?
Yeah, I'm surprised actually that it would extend that far. I figured that at some point you just would barely see them. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And something you mentioned at the beginning with like, you know, the Taliban in control, it feels a little more secure. And it probably is, because it's basically taking, you know, one group, what we in the like military would call, you know, a red group out of the picture, and they're essentially in control. With that, was there any concern of like Al Qaeda or ISIS when you were heading in, or you know, was your guide warning you about some areas with ISIS fighting?
No, he's like, you know, they're sort of around, but the Taliban's like pretty on top of it and them. Obviously there's the occasional, not even occasional, like semi-regular kind of suicide bombing that you have to assume is ISIS. But besides that, so, you know, I was just a little weary of like gatherings and you know, religious sites with gatherings. The guys didn't seem too worried about it. And there didn't, it's unclear to me what the Al Qaeda situation is. Like the thing, they had sort of fucking sniped that guy, not sniped. I think they killed him with a drone. The name is escaping me, the Egyptian guy.
The Al Qaeda leader. Yeah,
that felt very, dude, I'm talking out of my ass, but that felt very much like Biden trying to be like, all right, look what I can do. Like it seemed like that guy was just sort of retired. You know what I mean? Like chilling in the fucking nice neighborhood in Kabul. And they're like, look, they figure out a way to kill him without hurting anybody else. And like, look what we did or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, no, there was absolutely no Al Qaeda talk or like to my knowledge, or presence or concern. They were acting as if that was not a problem. ISIS, they were like, that is a thing, but not really. Like, it's not something we're likely to encounter. They're sort of like figuring out their next move, but are not really around that much, was what I gathered.
So
was it
when you
go ahead?
I said when you got there, did you have a travel plan, or like did you show up and you found a dude who's like, hey, I'll be your guide, or like how did that work?
So I had a plan.
Good.
Yeah, I would never just I'm not like enough of a cowboy to do that, to just show up and try to figure it out. We arranged it with this guy who's like in the like couple of the communities that I'm in on Facebook, where people like are kind of recommend this guy as the dispatcher. He lives in Pakistan, but he has sort of run tours in Afghanistan for a long time. He linked us up with this guy who ended up being great. Really lovely guy. And the thing that's nice about getting a tour guide in a country like that is, although it ends up being a little expensive, they're with you literally the entire day. Like they pick you up in the morning for breakfast and drop you off after dinner. There's never a situation where like, you know, it's the same amount of money that you'd hire a guide in some other country, but they are only with you for 3 hours. You know what I mean? So very, very comprehensive, with a pretty comprehensive itinerary. And I kind of just told them, I'm like, listen, like we don't want to spend a ton of time in museums and like seeing buildings and shit. Like I'd love to just like meet people and like interact, because it'll just make for way better video. And also I'm much more interested in that, you know? So that was sort of the deal, but there was like a full itinerary, which I didn't really read because I don't want to like spoil it for myself, if that makes sense. So I was like, all right, whatever. I trust these guys. Hopefully it'll be fine. And we sort of adjusted as we went based on what we were doing and shit.
Did he translate for you as well? Because that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, dude, without that, what a nightmare of a trip. I know people are doing it, and like I know they're like proud that they're doing it, but that's got to really fucking suck. I mean, I was reading stuff, some guy was like, yeah, like people getting blindfolded and held at gunpoint, and again, it ends up being fine, but like fuck that, dude. I don't want to do that, you know?
Yeah, well, that's why I asked about the like if it was planned or not, because part of that's probably on your guide as well. Because you talk about everywhere you went, there seemed to be a pretty significant Taliban presence. So like, good on your guide for taking you those places. Because if he takes you to like, oh, we're going to go to this obscure ass village out in Paktia, and there's no Taliban presence. There's like a little group of like 6 people. Why is that American here? That's a different story, right? It's kind of like hiding in plain sight type thing. Go places where there's a shitload of people. You're less likely for some rogue Taliban cell to try to snatch your ass. But you referenced in your guys' podcast where like they just detained the dude because they thought that's what they were supposed to do, and the commander shows up like, what the fuck are you doing? We don't, basically saying we don't do this anymore, the war's over. There's still, we talk about it as as intel analysts, like there's still, it's still a largely decentralized movement. It's more centralized now that it's the government, right? But you got dudes out in Farah, out in Western Afghanistan, who've never talked to the minister of defense now, who couldn't tell you what the supreme leader Hamidullah Akhundzada looks like, right. Shit like that. So you're going to get some mixed signals every now and then. Somebody's going to go, oh yeah, this is what we're supposed to do. So good on your guide for helping you get back to the States alive.
Well, but totally, to your point, like it seems, and from what I've heard, like it's unclear how much like communication is going on, like from the top down. So to your point, like I don't want to end up in a situation where like now some guy scoops me up and the Falcon that's delivering the message is still in flight and hasn't arrived yet. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be part of that. But yeah, dude, honestly, like for the most part, it was pretty nice, pretty pleasant. Once we had that sort of like uncomfortably long dinner, I was sort of like over it and ready to go home. But for the most part, it was pretty smooth sailing. Thankfully, besides bad roads and shit. What's that? What were you gonna say?
Oh, so yeah. Besides that dinner, what do you think of the food? Like they make some mean foot bread over there, man. Like that naan is awesome.
Yeah, the bread's amazing. The food's was all really good, man. I mean, I tried not to be super adventurous because like I've been getting food poisoning a lot the last few years, like when I've been traveling around. I ended up getting it anyway. I don't know if I got it in Afghanistan or Dubai, but I just know that I was sick as fuck on my flight home from Dubai, which sucked. But a lot of good rice, a lot of the meats are a little like bony, but like you could tell they're really fresh, Yeah, I thought the food was pretty phenomenal overall.
So you talked about like your interactions with the Taliban. What were some of your interactions with just like the ordinary citizenry? You told your guide you wanted to, spend more time talking to people. So can you tell us a little about just hanging out and talking to the average Afghan?
Totally, man. They were lovely, like the nicest people, like super like innocent. You know what I mean? Like just these really nice, kind-hearted, generous people, who like sincere, like I get invited to dinner 10 times a day, and people just like willing to give us like everything that, you know what I mean? Not actually, but like, here, take this, like pretty like clear that they didn't want anything in return. That's kind of been my experience in general in like Muslim countries. Like the people are just typically just like super welcoming and hospitable and nice. You obviously feel bad for them because of what they've sort of been through, and now also it's like really hard to get passports for them. Not that their passport was good to begin with, you know what I mean, but now the Taliban has like made it way more expensive for some reason that I don't fully understand. So people are just kind of like stuck and they can't go anywhere, so you got to feel for them. But yeah, all in all, people were super nice. Super friendly.
The Taliban is trying to deter Afghans from leaving, is essentially what that is.
They don't want a brain drain like right after they take over.
Yeah,
essentially.
Right. Yeah, like you have like Cambodia in the 70s where they killed all the doctors and lawyers and engineers, and like, why does the farm equipment not work? Because you killed the guy that designed it. Basically, in Afghanistan, there's concern that the academics are going to leave, the ones that haven't left, and then just the people in general who don't want to live under a Taliban government are going to leave because, look, the Taliban government, from what we've seen, is not much different than what we saw in the late 90s, early 2000s. You're going to have pockets where people are living life normally, such as Kabul, where there's 4 million people and you just can't control everybody. And you go to places, a small village in southern Balk province where you are at, that southern part of the province where it's less populated and you have enough of a Taliban presence there, you can force people to conform and adhere. Basically, it's like step one. Why the fuck was the Berlin Wall built, right? To keep the East Germans from leaving East Germany. Taliban have expensive ass passports to keep Afghans from leaving Afghanistan.
Makes sense. And that drive too. So yeah, I was looking at the list of the different places we went. Like we were in Samangan, Baghlan, Parawan, and I think that was it. And then Balkh, where obviously Mazar-e Sharif is at. Very adventurous drive. But like you guys were kind of saying before, really pretty country. Like it almost kind of looks like Utah. You know what I mean? It's sort of like dusty mountains and really pretty countryside and stuff.
Same marriage policies too.
So yeah, I was actually talking to my buddy Kirk, and the other day we were in Afghanistan together, and he said, why doesn't Afghanistan have both a ski lodge and like an Orvis fly fishing lodge over there, like a certified one? You can go over to Bamyan and catch some trout. I'm telling you, man, the trout. The Taliban have some serious tourism opportunities sitting in front of them if they can provide a safe country for it.
Yeah, the Bandi Amir, that lake was just like breathtaking, like super, super cool, super pretty.
Yeah, there's like places that are like snowed all year round. Like it'll be like June and there's like snow. It's like, man, what a wild place.
Back in the olden days, Afghanistan, during the days of the king, had a ski resort. I believe it was outside of Herat, right? And then you had the what the hell was the influx of the communist government. Then you had the Soviet-Afghan War, and all that shit went away. But like there used to be, celebrities back in the 50s and 60s had like vacation homes in Western Afghanistan. So like it's possible. And if the Taliban need money, and based on their tweets, they need fucking money. They're begging for $7 billion, which won't fund their government. Maybe they should open up at minimum, reestablish that ski lodge. But I do like the idea of a fly fishing setup out there, because there's a couple of nice ass rivers where you could probably get some decent sized fish.
Dude, for sure. Wait, but Zach and Kyle, where were you guys and when you were in Afghanistan predominantly?
So when I only went as a contractor, my one deployment in the army was to Iraq. I was in Baghdad, and then I was in Al-Assad and more towards the western part of the country. I went to Afghanistan in 2016 as a contractor. I ended up working in Kandahar with Stu and Kyle. When I got there, we get into Bagram, and I was really wanting to go to Mazar-e Sharif because, well, Mazar-e Sharif's fucking gorgeous, right? I wanted to go up there. It's not as hot as it is in the south, and the Germans were in Mazar-e Sharif, which I would have been able to, work on my German a little bit and possibly sneak a couple beers every now and then, because, you're not supposed to be drinking when you're in Afghanistan. But they sent me to Kandahar.
Hate to say it.
Yeah, I was based out of Bagram doing aviation missions, but we went to Mazar-e Sharif quite a bit. We went out west to Herat. Basically, there's always bad weather, so we diverted about everywhere and bought some Cuban cigars up at the Mazar-e Sharif German base. It's always available. But yeah, then I met these guys in Kandahar, so I mean they've got a lot more Afghan travel experience than I do. But I saw a lot of it from the air, the Alexandrian ruins, and all that stuff. It was really kind of cool. But yeah, it's there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in that country, like a lot of potential. Yeah. And I'm not saying like a capitalist, like bring all the gringos in and fucking turn it into, a capitalist hellscape like Pigeon Forge or something. But I mean, you could have some.
That's what the Chinese are for, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
Belt and Road, let's go, baby.
There's such nice places there, man. I hate to see it just turning. It's just a beautiful country, as you know.
And yeah, I was in Iraq in November of last year. And so different, like not, why would it be the same, obviously, but, as like a civilian, and people like, they just loop the two places in as if they literally have nothing in common pretty much. And
outside of religion, they're completely
Opposites. Literally nothing in common. Yeah, no, but so like, and in Iraq, I'm trying to get my girlfriend to go to Iraq with me, dude. Like Iraq is like a very visitable place. I had a great time there, and especially in like the north, like in Kurdistan, it's like not even Iraq. You know what I mean? I didn't go there. I'd like to, but whatever. So it was like way more modern than I thought, way more everything. So I was like, oh, maybe Afghanistan will be like that. And it just like wasn't. Afghanistan is like it's a throwback to like what life used to be like. You know what I mean? In almost every way. And to your guys' point, when you're talking about the marriage stuff, like I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, some of the antiquated like policies with women and shit, it's just like a culture thing too. You know what I mean? Like having a bunch of wives, like all this shit is just like not weird at all there. You know what I mean? Like people are, living like very conservative lives.
Yeah, I love the bit where you guys were talking about them kind of giving you shit for having a girlfriend. Like, they just have no concept of it at all. It's just like you get to a certain age and you just get a wife, and that's your life now. Like,
crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question though? So, like, when you hear about, you know, people like me going and doing this shit, like, what do you have? Is it annoying?
I'm like, for it, man.
It's not annoying. I'm just like, what the fuck? I don't know. Before I joined the military, like I had no plans to ever, you know, get into any of this shit. And then I guess our experiences are colored by the fact that we were, you know, getting fucking IDF, you know, every other day, and, you know, dealing with kind of being surrounded by a not hostile populace, but people who are like, you've been here 15 years, you know, what the hell's going on? And then Taliban elements among them. I don't know, you're the first American that we've seen go to Afghanistan. I'd noticed, you know, a lot of Brits and Australians were kind of making their way over there, but
yeah,
I mean, props to you. Like, I'm never going back there. Probably. I hope not.
I want to go. I want to
Yeah,
go.
like,
I'd love to be honest with you. I think Zach maybe the same way. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, no hard feelings, right? You know,
I mean, look, we lost,
religion.
right? So they should be cool with it. No, like when I see that people go, my first thought was like, I want to fucking talk to this guy because that's pretty cool. Like, and as you pointed out at the end of your episode, like, probably shouldn't go right now, and I think that's accurate, right? I'm more intrigued on is Afghanistan ready for the West to, you know, have that influx of tourism? Are they ready to become gentrified, if you will? And probably not yet, you know, based on what you were saying, but it's promising because like we've said throughout this, it's a gorgeous country, and the people as a whole in general are pretty nice. You have, you know, obviously pockets of people who absolutely fucking hate us, but at the same time, they have an understanding that they're the ruling class now. They're probably not going to harass us as much unless you had like some dipshit American walking around, you know, snuck some booze and gets drunk and he starts talking to like his guide about how he fucking killed all these, you know, Muslims over in this village and shit like that. Then you're gonna have a problem. But I think for the most part, Afghanistan's probably, you know, 4 or 5 years away from having actual, you know, visitors. I think this is it's a young government, and I mean, honestly, it's deriving from a system, you know, a Pashtunwali that I don't think is necessarily conducive to long-term success. I think ultimately the Taliban are going to have to, you know, give in to some you know, Western ideals in order to have that sustained long-term success. Yeah. So seeing somebody like you go it's not infuriating, it's not angering. If anything, it gives me hope, because as much as my wife doesn't want me to say this, I would fucking love to go back to Afghanistan just because, you know, the people are great, the food's great, the views are great.
Yeah,
you know,
it rocks for sure, man. It's funny you mentioned that. Like, we'd occasionally get some like young Taliban guy who check our passports, like couldn't believe that we were American, and then like the look on his face of like joy that we were, like this idea that like Americans are coming to visit here as tourists. Like, wow, we the Taliban truly are great. Like that was sort of the vibe. It was kind of weird. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I would like to maybe go back someday. I mean, who knows? But yeah, wouldn't it be nice for it to be a little more stable? That image you're painting though, as far as like, yeah, the way you get yourself in trouble over there, like, yeah, if you're like respectful of the way things are, like, and you're not asking for trouble, like, you'll probably be all right. But yeah, I love the image of that. Just some guy like smuggles in booze and he's like going down to the bazaar trying to pick up chicks. Like, that's like just not gonna hey, what's up? I can see you're cute under there. You know what I mean? Whatever. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't know. We'll see. Let me ask you guys this. So we ended up like kind of starting up some charitable stuff while I was over there, and I'm trying to like figure out now like how to go through all the protocol to like keep that going. I'm like worried that if I just like start sending money or some shit, like I'm gonna get in trouble somehow. Like, do you know anything about any of that?
Well, I mean, aside from funding the Taliban, you traitor to America. No, I kid. I think there's some concern that there's nothing illegal, right, with what you're doing. You're funding a school. As if anybody's listening to the podcast, and we'll plug it and we'll make sure to include it in our episode description, right? There's nothing illegal, immoral, unethical with any of that. There's questions on if they're going to receive the money, though.
Right.
I don't know the first thing about it, to be honest with you.
I don't know why. I mean, I'm just curious. Like, you guys obviously know a lot about a lot of things, so I figured it was worth a shot.
You mentioned like your assurance was that the village elder was sort of going to be taking care of things.
That's about as good as we got.
Afghanistan is known for monetary corruption typically. It's just that's the way business happens there. So I'm sure I don't have a percentage for you, but some of what you gave is definitely going into that guy's pockets. But from there, I mean, I'd say he'll be able to bribe the Taliban to leave them alone if there are any issues with it.
Yeah, if he's legitimately concerned about education and stuff like that, he'll certainly put that money to good use.
Yeah, and it's hard to finding the right guy. Yeah, it'd be finding the right guy, and honestly, having him send you like some sort of proof of like people in class.
Yeah, so I have like pretty comprehensive video footage and of everything going on, which is nice.
That's
so,
good. That's good.
So the system is like pretty solid, like as far as I can see, as far as like the guy who I'm working with is not the guy who's getting the money. He, so I don't know. To your point, like there's no way to be like, oh, if there are like individuals distributing the money, like clearly there's a risk of, it kind of not going perfectly. But to what I can see so far, man, it looks pretty good, unless they're like doing some kind of very comprehensive staging.
It's unlikely they're able to pull that off. I mean, if they weren't sending you any proof of it or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, this is kind of sketchy. But if they're sending you pictures of kids in classes or at school going up or whatever, I mean, it's better than nothing. You know what I mean? Because that takes a bit of effort to come up with. So
yeah, no, we got like, I've met all the teachers. They're in all the videos. The kids are like addressing me directly. Like it's like, so far so good. And I've had like pretty good success using Western Union, sending money to like weird places. But again, I just don't want to be like the individual. I don't want to somehow just like end up in the bad graces of the government somehow. Like, you know what I mean? I'm establishing a charity and stuff. It'll be fine. But I'm literally
there's a Western Union in Afghanistan.
Yeah, there's a bunch actually. It's crazy, bro. It's crazy. That's how I paid my tour guides in Iraq too. I made the deposit, Western Union. It's pretty amazing.
Got to wire that money, man. You got to wire it. But yeah, I think what you're doing is great, though, Giulio. I mean, somebody has to fund that stuff, and with all the money being tied up in a New York bank right now, and that not being the priority of the Taliban, I think, I think if you find that there are people that in Afghanistan that are very enthusiastic about education, especially like girls' education and stuff. So, I mean, there's a very good chance that you found the right person and they're doing what's right and get the kids in school. I think
so. It's interesting too. The guy was saying some of the people were saying that the biggest risk, they're like, the Taliban is like not going to have a problem with this. They're like, the only problem would be like bandits was what they were calling them, but just like people knowing that there's like money in places like that could be a problem. They're like, getting robbed would not be crazy. Like, things are like super desperate here, blah, blah, blah. So, bummer. But
the average Afghan made $600 a year. So yeah, if there's word of, I don't know, let's say $4,000 in somebody's suitcase,
right,
they might ask for a donation.
Totally.
And 100 seems, I'm not at all surprised that they were cool with just 100. But I will say, if you ever do go back, like, take that same amount of money and just see how much shit you can buy at a bazaar. You could like own a town.
I know,
in about 30 minutes.
It was, dude. It was the cheapest place I've ever been by far. And it was pretty remarkable, the kind of stuff you could buy for how little money. You go to the nicest restaurant in the entire fucking country and have 4 people, dinner with 4 people is like $10. And then like the guides were trying to like pay for themselves. I'm like, dude, I'm paying. Are you serious? Like,
yeah, $10. I'm a big spender here, buddy. Let's go. Make it rain here, dude.
This is $2. Like, you guys keep your money. Jesus Christ. Like, but yeah, wild, man.
So would you go back, Giulio?
What's up?
You'd go back?
Yeah. I need a little bit of a break though. But yeah, man, why not? Like, I really maintain, and it's famous last words, probably it's gonna be written on my gravestone because I say it so much and it's gonna end up biting me in the ass. But like, stuff, I'm way less afraid of stuff like terrorism than I am of just like places where there's like a ton of muggings. You know what I mean? Like, if people get mugged in a place, you like may get mugged if you walk around. You know what I mean? The chances of just like getting caught up and suicide bombing, like it's not something that would stop me from going somewhere, just because like that's the whole point of terrorism. It's like optics, you know what I mean? Right. It appears that it's done way more damage than it actually has. And granted, I anybody who the large number of people who've died in them, like, it's fucking tragic and terrible. Obviously, I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying, like, that kind of shit doesn't scare me. I'm way more scared of like walking around Rio by myself and not knowing where I'm going. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm way more afraid of South America than I am of some of these places that have a ton of terrorism. I'm just like, for real. So I would go back. I'm trying to cover a lot of ground. So we'll see, man. Would love to make it happen. Got to start making more money to fund this shit too,
Yeah, I mean, at least your guides knew, avoid the big religious gatherings, avoid large gatherings. I mean, if you do that, there's a very good chance you'll be quite all right.
They were sort of fine, but like they were a little still more willing to go to things than we maybe were for that reason. They're like, oh, what? It's fine. And I'd be like, oh, I don't know, dude. It's like a big gathering. And then he'd be like, oh, you're right. And I'd be like, you didn't think, you should have thought of that, dude. I would have liked for you to have thought of that. But yes, like we weren't in any religious holiday stuff or like, minority religious holiday demonstrations, whatever. We tried our best to lay low as best we could, man.
So, question I had like 30 minutes ago. So perfect. You mentioned a lot of them like trying to take pictures with you. Did your translator mention at all them saying that you were like a beautiful man or something like that? Because that's a common occurrence for people wanting to get pictures.
Dude, so no, but like that was definitely the vibe. There's just like weird vibe. Like it's a touchy-feely kind of, little what's going on here, guys type of deal. But I don't, not specifically, but they were literally taking pictures of us. They were not even in the photos. They're like, oh, take a picture. And they're like, wow, this is amazing that we have this. I guess that they've sort of been instructed not to be in videos and photos, which I don't know, because I was watching some vlogs of people who went there like right after the pullout of the U.S. troops. And there was way more Taliban in videos back then. And now it's like pretty much like it's really, really hard to get stuff of them directly. Like nobody was willing to really be on camera.
Yeah, like the dust settled and some edicts came out, and rules were handed down. Minimize your presence and shit like that. So
I've
that's
been
probably where
hearing
that
that
comes
too.
from.
Totally. I've been hearing that like now, even, a few weeks after I've gotten back, it's a little bit more difficult to move around as a tourist. Like they make you register when you go into different provinces, which they weren't doing before. So they're already starting to kind of like crack down, I guess, if you want to call it. But I've spoken with the guy I was over there with a bunch, and he's had 2 or 3 other guests, women too, like American women. Crazy, like travel.
No way I'd do that. No way.
Yeah, he says that they just treat foreigners different. Like it's as if they're like a different gender or something. Like kind of crazy. But yeah, dude. So he's been saying it's been pretty straightforward still. So yeah, we'll see, bro. It's gonna be interesting to see what the next few years are like for them over there.
Where are you? What dangerous country are you planning to travel to next?
I don't know.
Iran.
Yeah, I think that would actually be a good one.
It'd be interesting. We had people. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and he was training pilots over there in the 70s. So we're not too far removed. Yeah,
that was when we sold those Tomcats to him, and we haven't done anything with them since. So
there's this really cool documentary on PBS called Our Man in Tehran, and have you guys seen it? It's really good. It's just about this like Dutch guy who marries an Iranian woman, and he like lives over there and speaks Farsi, and like it's like hilarious. I think it's like 3 or 4 hours long. It's like one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Instantly made me want to go over there, but it's a pain in the ass with a US passport. You don't really have a ton of freedom to move around. Obviously shit is like crazy there now too, specifically. But I'm working on getting an Italian passport. So I'll be there one day. But right now, like the way my process works, like when I get back from a big trip like that and I'm editing, I sort of am like not thinking about where I'm going to go. It's not until I sort of like get past the halfway point and it starts actually feeling good or like I'm making progress. I do think this video is going to be pretty sick, like the Afghanistan stuff. So once I'm like 70% done with that, the wheels will start turning again. Next year, I'll probably go somewhere, we'll see, man.
And for your stand up, I mean, you just got fuckloads of content right now from
it's trip. Almost like too much, man. Like it's almost like it's hard to like sit there and do a set and then like casually sneak Afghanistan into it, because then people are like, well, first of all, what? Second, it's just like distracting, and maybe that's just like me thinking that, but it's almost like one day I'm gonna have to do some sort of like one-man show about traveling. Otherwise, like only little sprinkles make it into my act, and I don't even do them all the time. But I have been working out some of the Afghanistan material. I just kind of get worried about like being in the wrong place and like having guys who served over there, and I'm up there sort of like I'd be afraid that it like comes off as disrespectful and I get my ass kicked after the show or something. Like hopefully I'm assuming that probably would never happen. I don't know, but who knows? So I'm figuring it out.
Well, people have ignored Afghanistan for 21 years, so they can ignore it for your 30-minute stand-up set. You know what I mean? Like, it probably won't do too much damage.
No, I would say fuck those guys. And if it's funny, it's funny. I'll have to find this guy and send the clip to you. But we've done a couple episodes of another podcast with some infantrymen, and he shared a stand-up bit from a guy who's a veteran talking about how Memorial Day should be for him because he made it through and shit like that. It's like super dark comedy and humor and shit.
I finished
right?
my contract.
Yeah,
great shit.
It's awesome. Shit like that. It's like it's super funny. So say fucked up shit about our time in Afghanistan, whatever. And if they can't take it, that's on them. You should hear the shit we've all said in uniform to one another. They should be just fine.
If they can't take it, they were probably pogues. Let's be real. Pogues get the most butthurt about shit. I mean, we're all pogues, but
yes.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, you're talking about funding the trip. Just do a few more Netflix stand-ups, dude. Come on now. Between the four of us, there's one, and it's you. Just call Pete. Tell him you need some money to go somewhere else.
I know, dude. I know, you're right. We'll see if I can get him on board.
Take him with you.
I know, dude. That'll be a tough sell. It's tough to get him to come over my apartment. Like it's gonna be tough to get him to go to Afghanistan, man. We'll see that.
I think if somebody were to get captured based on watching his stand-up, it would be Pete Davidson.
I hope not, bro. I need him to keep doing well and bringing me along with him.
Oh man. Well, do either you have anything? Julia, do you have any other questions for us?
Not really, dude. This is fun though. This is like I assumed like people were gonna want to talk about this. So anytime anybody does, it's exciting because it was just such a cool thing. As you know, especially talking to other people who've been there, it's sort of a special thing, and it must be interesting, I'm sure, for you guys to talk to somebody who like was over there just dicking around as opposed to like, being in the war. And it's interesting you guys have to say too.
What makes it great is that we've had, obviously we were all in the intelligence community. We've had our friends on who are in the intelligence community. We've had guys from the infantry who are on. We've had journalists. We've had Georgetown professors. So why not a stand-up comedian from New Jersey? Like, who better to talk about Afghanistan than some dude from like, fucking Newark or wherever you're from.
Yeah. That's funny, man. I love it.
So
it's definitely great getting that different perspective.
Absolutely.
I loved and we're gonna go over this, but yeah, the podcast was absolutely amazing. I loved your bit about the flight back. Like besides being sick, just how shitty that flight is. And I got to tell you, man, like when we were making contractor money, it was straight up business class on that way back. Like that's your little treat coming back from your deployment.
Hell yeah, that's sick. When you guys so you guys were flying on like normal commercial flights? I've always wondered about that.
So in the Army, you fly on like a C-130 or whatever.
Right.
Over there, but contracting, yeah, we basically took the same route you did into Dubai, and then there was I don't think it's the same airline anymore, but there used to be like an American owned airline that they contracted that flew from Dubai to Kandahar and Bagram.
Interesting.
Ariana.
Oh yeah, I saw those planes there, but I don't think that they're operating right now. I think KMAG.
They're not. So
that's
the
the
way
Afghan
it would
national
work,
airline.
Yeah, the way it will work is we would fly from Kandahar into Dubai, and then from there, whatever your airline of choice was to get back to the States or wherever you're going, you get back to Dubai, you go to Terminal 1, then you go to Terminal 2, hang out with all the people you're trying to kill, then you get on Ariana Airlines, and you would come back to Kandahar. And so for whatever reason, the closest McDonald's is in that Dubai airport, and I would get so fucking angry, like coming back from like my R&R. I just visited my wife and my kid, and like, okay, I'm gonna get back to Afghanistan and make this money so they're happy. And like, there's some asshole trying to shove like 3 bags of fucking Big Macs in the overhead, and they're sitting there bitching that there's no there's no room for the luggage. Like, well, this dude doesn't need to bring his fucking cheeseburgers. And it's like a 5-hour flight, right? So once you get to into Kandahar, the shit's all cold anyways.
Yeah, but bringing it back for the boys, man. Come on,
man, fuck the boys.
That guy's at home.
I just got cigars when I was there.
Badass, dude.
Yeah.
Badass.
But shit, Giulio, man. Thank you. Yeah, we try to go around an hour. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a fucking blast. We'll have to have you on again for something. We can't. We're not big enough to be like an amplifying voice, but if you feel like just fucking talking shit about something, we'd love to have you because it's cool, awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for sure.
Our thing on here is at the end we give the last word to our guest. So feel free. Say where people can find you. If you have any links or whatever for supporting the school that you're funding over there, share that, and we'll be happy to link that down below as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I unfortunately don't have it yet. It should be up and rolling. I'll let you guys know like once we launch it. We'll launch all the stuff. For now, this video will be on YouTube in a couple of months. You just search my name, Giulio Gallarotti. It's on my channel. I'm excited about that. My Instagram's at not Julio. And I post a lot of like the clips from the videos there too. Check out Oops the Podcast. I think that's about it. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.